Hello and welcome to the Health Odyssey podcast, episode 207. Now, we are joined by a very, very special guest today, and it's a couple of firsts on this guest, who I will introduce you to in a minute, and I'll tee up. But we're really excited to have this guest on. It's someone I've wanted to talk to for a while, and we've managed to talk to them, and it's in slightly unusual but exciting circumstances. And different circumstances that we're talking to them. But first of all, I'll just catch up with Mr. Peter Lant, the usual co-host of the show, and see how he's getting on. How are you doing, Pete? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this. We're talking about the DW, the Devizes, because I'm just up the road from Devizes, aren't I? So I know where that is, and it'll be interesting because to see if this guy's ever canoed the Cane Hill locks, because there's something like 23 locks all in a row in Devizes, like on the canal. If you see it, it's amazing. But yeah, going down that in a canoe would probably be quite tricky, I would imagine.
You'll have to watch some of these. I've been watching these videos. I'm not a canoeing expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been watching some of these videos and they're really great. Oh, and there's also, I'll talk to you at the end, actually, Keith, because I think I went to school with someone who who was always into his canoeing and things. So, and I saw we're mutual friends, so that's great. But we are going to be joined today by Keith Moule. And Keith is he's from England, but he's actually, excitingly, he's out in Poland at the moment. So it's the first person in 207 episodes talking about canoeing, and the first person in 207 episodes coming from Poland. So he's in Poland at the moment for the Canoeing European Marathon Championships, and he's sort of watching and supporting, and he's actually joining us between races. And if you are watching on YouTube, there's actually kind of a body of water that's over his shoulder, and he said that there'll be some races going off in a bit, and we may see some canoeists moving along behind him. But yeah, so it's almost like we're doing it's like one of these Olympic broadcasts where you've got someone live at the live at the events.
You keep believing that, Jay.
I'll keep believing that. Yeah,
you can see that in your head.
But no, it does. He's outside and he's in the setting, which is fantastic. So so Keith, lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for like you say for getting on the call with us from Poland in between races. I suppose first of all, Keith, for the listeners and for us as well, do you want to maybe start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background, your kind of athletic background and history? We can maybe jump in and ask some questions along the way. And then, as I said, this is a very flowing, loose, conversational kind of podcast. So we kind of go wherever the mood takes us and wherever the stories take us. But yeah, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Keith, really to begin with, and a bit about yourself and your background.
Perfect. Thanks very much, guys. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys. For myself, my background, it very much came from canoeing, as you've alluded to already. And that came about as, I guess, when I was a little bit younger, my parents looked to find a sport for a hyperactive kid to get involved in. And luckily for us, Chelmsford had a great canoe club just in town. And it was by chance, I think, walking past that they spotted it, popped our heads in and spoke. And it's a great club. It was one that really welcomed families. They had a family membership that was, plenty affordable for us to be able to get involved in it. And that, that was a big barrier for us to break down at the time. And it was significant that we could get involved in it. I got my first boat for, I think it was £75, and my first set of paddles for about £60. And, that set me up. And because I had that, I could go to the club as many times as I wanted. I would go there in the summer with my friends. And it's something before I really knew it, I got good without knowing that I was good. I was just trying to beat the next person. I've always had that kind of competitive mindset. I remember winding my brother up a lot as a kid, and I'd be like, race me around the block. Leave me alone. And I was like, all right, time me around the block. So I was getting timed around the block because he'd be sick of racing against me. And so I always had that mentality. I wanted to race people. And then my parents would end up driving me around the country to go to different races and get to meet different training groups. And I just loved it. And eventually, before I knew it, I was strong enough to join the British team as a junior. And then that was awesome. I got to go away, places like where I am today. In fact, Poland is the first time I went to a senior world championships back in 2001. But before then, as a junior, I got to go away a lot. And it was a way of kind of seeing the world and meeting more people, like-minded people. And I loved it. So I've always been involved in racing, always been involved in training. But I think I really enjoyed the most is just trying to get better at something. And I've enjoyed that, doing that myself. and I enjoy it just as much trying to help other people as well. So now my racing years are behind me. As much as I'd love to be out there racing against these guys this afternoon, I'll probably look out there thinking, I could still do that. Can't be that hard. But no, those years are probably beyond me now. And so I just love being involved in it. Anything I can do to help people, if it's just give a snippet of advice, if it's point them in the right direction, and I can see that having a positive impact on what they're doing. Great. That's exactly where I want to be. That's exactly what I want to be involved with.
Excellent. So, I mean, how old were you when you took up canoeing, when you first had that kind of fateful, walk past the canoe club and then decided you were going to have a go? How old were you when you first had a go?
So I think I was 12 or 13, and someone might confidently tell me that I've confidently made that fact wrong, but I'm sure it was around the age of 12, 13, which was great. And it was old enough to be able to go and join in a group of mates down there. And the junior setup all starts from under 18s, but you could get involved with that club at younger and just progress from there. And as I said, when the sun's out and it's the summer, there's nothing better as a kid to go down and play on the river. I mean, you've got the opportunity to go out with your mates on the water on your own boat. Perfect way to waste away those 6 weeks of holidays.
Yeah, because I live in Chelmsford myself, and then I see lots of I know exactly where the canoe club is, and see lots of people because the gym is kind of the other side of Central Park. So all along the river there, summer evenings, there's loads of sort of canoeists going up and down, and yeah, it always looks lovely. So when you were competing, obviously, and I know from doing a bit of research on this, if you had over 20 years, I think, of kind of international competition and racing and things that you've done. What was as a kind of, like I say, not someone who's an expert in this, what kind of distances were you racing internationally when you go to these kind of competitions and things?
So the sport's split up into two main areas. You've got marathon and sprint. And I've been fortunate enough to be part of both of those disciplines throughout my canoeing career. And I started just as someone who paddled, just loved it, and got quite good at it at a young age. So back then, I never really divided the two between I'm a sprinter or I'm a marathon paddler. I was just a canoeist, loved it, and I'd go out, and I was fortunate enough to train with a group of people that like going fast. So I got to a good speed, and that was good enough to get me into the sprint team. And the sprint team was the one that had the lottery funding. That's the discipline that you'll see in the Olympics that's starting on Friday. You have different disciplines within it, and that subsection of the sport, sprinting and the slalom, which is one where you see them go down the white water through the poles. They're the two disciplines that make the Olympics. So in my early days, I was much more of a sprinter, and I was quick. So I was able to represent Great Britain in 200 meters, 500 meters, 1,000 meters, and that's the individual 2-man boats, 4-man boats as well. But then we'd have the marathon assessment races, and the marathon assessment races domestically are about 30 kilometers. And back then it was a full marathon distance. So back in the day, you had 42-kilometer internationals, which I'm pleased to say they don't do that distance anymore. I was part of that era, just about hung on to it. That went out for 3+ hours of racing. But I think they decided nothing happened in the middle hour. So they were like, why don't we cut this down? So yeah, throughout my paddle career, I've been able to represent Great Britain from everything from 200 meters right the way up to being invited to go to South Africa to represent Great Britain on a 240-kilometer multi-day international race called the Berg. And yeah, loved every section of it. I can't tell. I think a friend of mine once said the older you get, the further you have to paddle to stay good, Keith. And maybe that's what I went to. My best results have come from marathon. I think that suits my mindset. I think that suits the way that I train. I always love working hard. Firm believer, you work hard enough for long enough, you can create your own success in whatever you want to do. So marathon really suits that side of things.
So marathon is an actual marathon, like a 26 miles, 42 kilometer.
So it used to be. It always was. It isn't now. So they're going to have the long course, as we call it. They have the marathons here this weekend. And that'll be 30 kilometers now. I don't know when it changed. I think it's changed circa 2003. And they used to race full marathon distance, 26.2 miles, 42 kilometers. But as I said, I think they looked at it and thought, nothing changes. Everyone does the races the first hour, and everyone just settles in for the long haul, and then they race the last hour. Like, why don't we bin the middle hour and make it more spectator friendly?
Which is why it wasn't in the Olympics, right? Because everyone just switch off our suckers. But now what's interesting though, because you get marathons in lots of different things, don't you? And a marathon, like in running, is obviously a marathon, but a marathon in lots of other things just means a very long time.
True.
So what's the how do you say, what's the equivalent, as in, how does it feel? I mean, you're not a runner, so you probably don't know, but you can probably, like, that's kind of the closest I can think about it. I mean, how because there's a thing, we talk about kettlebell sports sometimes, and they have a marathon and is that an hour or half an hour or something?
That's an hour, yeah.
It's lifting weights for an hour, which just sounds horrible, right? I'd much rather go for a run, even though I hate running. But for canoeing, what is it like? What's it? How comparable is it? Do you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, good question. I would say it is comparable to if you're running a marathon. So I got involved in running a lot after my canoeing years. But the top guys on Saturday, when the senior men's racing, they'll compete for about 2 hours and 5 minutes to 2 hours and 10 minutes, and then the top marathon runners will do the same sort of time. So it's that plus 2 hour window, which, you know, in my mind goes deep into the aerobic side of things. You've got a lot of the tactics, but a lot of people can race at high intensity for an hour. When you're plus 80 minutes, that's when it's kind of your physical setup, your heart and lungs, not just your race tactics and your speed. That's kind of deep into it. A lot of people have got a good hour in them. Not a lot of people have got a good 2 hours in them, and then you've got that. And then when you've done 2 hours, have you still got a sprint finish in you as well?
I suppose it's quite
that's really interesting, because I think really, like, physiologically, it's a human, isn't it? And like most humans at an elite level might have like 2 hours in them. And like you say, like a lot of people will have an hour in them, and it doesn't matter what the discipline is. It's just, that's it. And it's kind of, I find that really interesting, because it's like, it's just the human body.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've always wondered how much it comes from kind of energy stores that you've got, because so from my experience from nutrition and physiology side of things, your burn rate of calories, how much is your burn rate versus the amount of calories available, sugar, essentially glucose in your blood, and then you're going to start converting that glucose from your glycogen and your muscle storage. When that depletes, that crossover to burning free fatty acids, how good you are switching between those energy systems. The more you do it, the more you can bounce between energy systems. So a lot of people really hit the wall, and for me, that's a case of you've depleted your glycogen stores, and your body's got to switch to burning more free fatty acids, because you're going deep into that aerobic side of things. But if you don't do that, your body doesn't want to do it. It doesn't like doing it. It wants to burn sugar, so it makes you feel awful, makes you crave sugar. So you do it. But the more you make your body go over that zone, the better you get at that 2 hour to 2.5 hour window. And then I find there's another big jump when you start going over 4 hours for the first time. And there's not many athletes who come along want to do anything. Not many people do anything consistently for 4 hours apart from sleeping, let alone running or canoeing. And I always found that when I've got the younger people join in with me, when I start doing these more ultra stuff, I'll be like, yeah, we're going to go for a 3 hour paddle, we're going to go for a 4 hour paddle, or do a 5 hour paddle. They'll go off at a crazy pace. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times. You've got to learn the hard way. It's the best way to learn. It's the easiest way to learn in the long run. And you go out hard, and you'll crash after about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, until you get used to what does your body feel like going beyond that 3.5 hour window.
Because this, I suppose, takes us into one thing. I was just going to make an observation, was that something you said earlier, where I know in running and things that you'll get people who maybe run maybe the 4, the 800, maybe they'll, as they get older, they might move into like a 5K, a 10K, and then they may even go like half marathon. And you said, didn't you, as you get older, you kind of move more into the longer distances, the ultra distances and that sort of thing, which is kind of bringing us in, because as Pete said, a lot of these kind of traditional endurance events are around that kind of 2 hour mark, maybe. And the thing that you obviously hold, one of the things, I don't possibly more, but one of the things that I've been watching about you, which you currently hold the world record in, is the Devizes to Westminster. And I think that's 125 mile.
Yeah, that's right.
Canoe race. And that, I mean, you're paddling there for like over 15 hours. So that's kind of a totally different kind of totally different end of the scale again. So do you want to maybe explain to us what that race is, why it's so, because I've heard of it before, like I say, I'm not in this realm, but I've heard of the kind of Devizes to Westminster race and things. So what is it, and how you how and when you went and broke the record and that sort of thing?
Yeah, crazy race. It's an incredible race. It's something that always sat on the canoeing calendar of these events. These lunatics go out every Easter weekend, and some of these guys, they go out every year and they do it. Massive respect to those guys. And it's something that I was involved in supporting, maybe my first or second year of canoeing. Someone down the club was doing it and they wanted some help supporting, and my parents said, "Oh, we'll come and help you." And I got to see it. It was back then we supported a guy who did it over 4 days, and I got to see it over this time. We'd look after him. We'd kind of give him his food, give him his drink. So I was always aware of this thing. And then as the years went on, I was quite good at marathon, and I had the opportunity to take on the race to try and be the first ever mixed K2 to win it. So one boy, one girl. And the girl I was with, she was phenomenal. Lizzie Broughton, she was second fastest female in the world at marathon at the time. And it was a great opportunity to go there. And the race scared the hell out of me, to be honest. I was quite good. I was in the top 10 of the world at the time. But we wanted to take this thing on. But as I said before, the only thing I'd done for more than that time was sleep or stay awake, let alone paddle consistently. I thought, I don't know what's going to happen to my body in that time. And unfortunately, the race went really well back then in 2015, and we did win it. First ever female to win it. It was an awesome achievement. And I felt like I'd been hit by a couple of buses the next morning after that. But it also showed that I wasn't made of glass. It showed that just how much the body is able to do if you put your mind to it. And if you don't mind pushing the boundaries of hurting yourself, you realize what you can do. So then fast forward to the opportunity to try and take on the outright record. Now, this was a record that had stood for over 40 years. And some people say, oh, it's not going to get beaten. It can't be done. If the river conditions get that fast, it has to be fast to beat it. And if it does, they're going to cancel it because of health and safety these days. Because back in the Wild West days of health and safety, they just laughed in the face of it and they just send them out. They were made of tougher stuff back then, so they didn't mind. They just sent them down there with jumpers and point them in the right direction, and they were fine. But we thought, you know what, we can take this on. We can do it. I had the opportunity to pair up with a guy called Tom Sharp, who's a phenomenal athlete over that distance. He'd won the individual a few times as well, I think. And I remember meeting up in London, and we'd attempted once before and they cancelled the race. We attempted another time and I was ill, so we didn't get to the finish. We were just off the pace anyway. I really let them down that time. I was awful. And then we were out for a couple of years, and then the race had just happened, and we tracked it because we always track it because I love it. I love watching sport. I love being involved in it. I remember meeting up for a coffee with him in London because we both worked in the city. And we kind of said, look, we're going to do this or not. We owe it to ourselves. We've invested this much of time, and there's 2 people that can beat this record. There's us 2. We're hyping ourselves up, all right. It's like, okay, cool. Let's commit to it. I'll commit to getting quick. I'll spend the summer getting ready, get up to speed, and then we'll really turn up the volume through the winter, and that'll give us the best shout at it. And that's exactly what we did. The speed came back much quicker than I expected. I was national champion later that summer, and I shouldn't have been at the age of 43 or whatever I was at that year. But my speed was kind of back, not fully back, but back enough for that sort of event. And then it was just a case of, okay, let's turn the dial up on this thing. Let's push the volume more than anyone's ever pushed the volume before in our country, and do stuff that just wouldn't people do before. And that will give us the best opportunity for this thing.
Yeah. And then, like you say, the record, I think it held for 44 years when you broke it. And I think you broke it by knocked about 15 minutes off, didn't you, off of the existing record. And that's paddling. And I saw the video. I obviously watched the abridged video, which says 15 hours. And I think you've got like an edited video that's about 5 to 10 minutes on your YouTube, which was great because obviously at certain points you have to get out, don't you? And then carry the boat maybe past the lock or something and get back in. And was it really, I mean, to obviously break the record, I mean, I take it you're kind of gunning it as much as you can gun it the whole way for 15 hours, because you obviously have to pace yourself. Like you say, some of these people who go off really, really quick in the first hour would just not be able to survive. But you'd obviously pitched it, and the tactics were obviously perfect for the day and to give you that result. Is that right?
Yeah, that's 100% right. We knew what we could do, and we'd done a lot of long paddles. And you're never going to go out and train and do 200 kilometers. That would be ludicrous. But we'd gone out and we'd done 90-kilometer paddles, and not many people would do that. We'd consistently do 40 kilometers. I was doing 2 hours on the paddle machine, which is like a rowing machine, a paddle equivalent, over and over again. Our target was to do 200 kilometers a week between running and kayaking. So the volume was there, and we knew what pace we could do as well. We've done enough races, we've enough experience. Myself and Tom back in 2013, 14, get the year wrong. We were 11th in the world in K2 over marathon distance. So we paddled a quick boat. We knew we paddled well together. We just had to, which made such a significant difference actually, because over that time, you know, things start to hurt, things start to ache. You want to be comfortable. If someone's just slightly out, you're going to hate them. You're going to hate them after 100 kilometers. You're not going to be friends if something's out. But we got on so well in the boat. We didn't have to be together all the time. We knew we were going to paddle well. And yeah, we just set about a pace that we knew would give us a chance. So this first section, first half is pretty much on a canal. So in and out of the boat a lot. There's no help from the river. It's not flowing with you. It's still water. We just had to, we always got to survive it. Our version of survive it versus other people survive it at different speeds. We were still gunning against the clock, because the only thing we were racing was when they said go, that's it. Time doesn't stop, because we were having a tough time. We had to set the pace that we needed to do to give ourselves the best opportunity to take that record there. And I was confident throughout. I felt, look, we've done the work. If there's a crew that's going to do it, it's us. And there's no point at all during the race. Actually, the thing that put me the most anxiety, because sometimes when you're doing all this training, you go into a race and you start tapering, you start resting up for it. You've got to rest up, obviously, because you're going to see a huge event. That's the time when I'm not sure how good I am. And that's when like some negativity can start creeping in. And it's not because I'm suddenly think I've forgotten how to paddle or I've got unfit in the last day and a half. It's you just don't know something. So when I was about 1 hour into the race, then I was super confident I was going to break the record, because I felt like me. I felt right. I felt good. I felt, yeah, this is it. My heart rate's right. My pace is right. I feel good. I was going to attack the next 15 hours and make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Phil. I don't know if you've heard of Phil Maffetone before, but he's very much involved in kind of like endurance, and he was coaching Mark Allen in Ironman back in like the 90s and stuff like that. And then we had Sean Conway on as well, who did the 100 plus. Was it 102 Ironmans in 102 days, Pete? Was it? Oh, you muted at the moment, Pete. Sorry, mate.
Sorry, Sean's making a cup of tea in the background.
Oh,
it was 105.
105 Ironmans
yeah.
in 105 days. So I mean, in terms of, so we've spoke to people about endurance before, but not this kind. You know, this obviously this is endurance, but I suppose with Sean, it was about, obviously with you know, Ironman Hawaii and stuff. It's trying you're going for win that, but with Sean doing his Ironmans, the time that it took him to do them wasn't important. It was just about doing them. But this, you've got an ultra endurance kind of event, and you're going for the time. You know, you're going for the world record. So, I mean, in terms of training, and without getting too sort of specific, so we don't sort of lose people in terms of the detail. I mean, are you really trying to build your kind of aerobic base at a low level of intensity, and then are you also pushing you know, intervals and intense efforts as well? Is that how it kind of works? Because you mentioned also canoeing and running in the training for it, so presumably you just need your your aerobic system just to be as powerful as it can be.
Yeah, 100%. Having your aerobic system, having confidence in your aerobic system, having confidence of how hard you can work over 4 hours. And as far as interval stuff side of things, actually on these ultra endurance events, you're trying in a way making it as boring as possible. If you can keep the intensity down, if you can stop your heart rate jumping, so you've got to get out and run with the boat. Now we want to be swift, we want to be moving, but we don't want the heart rate to bounce. It's a bit like on an ultra run. If you've got a lot of elevation to do, you're not going to run up it as fast as you can. Your heart rate can go through the roof, and the detrimental impact to that 5 hours later is really going to hurt you. So when I stopped canoeing, I got lured into the the world of ultra running, and I do mean lured into it, because a friend of mine was doing it. He's doing his UTMBs, he's doing his 100 miles. And be like, Keith, come along and join in. I need a pacer, or I need someone to do a recce with me. And I'm thinking, I'm not a runner, Chris. You know, it's a guy called Chris Howard, done loads of them. I'm top heavy. I'm not built for this. You know, my legs, like, I wear trousers and not shorts in the summer for a reason. It looked like the string hanging down from me. You know, I'm all shoulders and chest. I'm not built for running. But I had the heart and lungs for it. So I'd go out with him, and by the end of it, my knees would be killing me. But I could do him with him a little bit. And then towards the end of that, there was a 70k one, and I'd done a recce with him, and he said, "Oh, you might as well do it now." I thought, that's a stupid idea, but sometimes I just need someone to say these stupid ideas, and I'll be like, "Yeah, go on then." Or someone will say, "Oh, the old Keith would have done that," and then I'll be like, "Oh, right, yeah, go on then." Get me back in there, I'll join in. So
these are friends of yours, right?
yeah. We don't talk much anymore, because when we do, something disastrous comes along. We come up with a stupid idea. But yeah, we go. In fact, the same idiot's doing. I'm doing a 100-mile running race in January, and he's doing the same thing. And but it's having these ideas and just kind of working towards them and seeing where it goes. And the first time I did 100 kilometers, and that absolutely killed me. It was in Jersey. It was around Jersey and back round most of it again. And then I attempted to do 100 miles. I thought that'd be brilliant. Once I've done 100 miles, I'll tick it off. I can retire from that world. I put it on my CV, and attempted it once and failed it. Attempted it twice and failed it. I remember on the third attempt, and my parents, they're brilliant. They come and support me in all of these things. They give me the drinks, give me the food. They come along. They love going from point to point. And I remember saying, look, if you're going to come and support, it's either got to be two options. We've either got to go to the hospital at the end of it and say what's wrong with them, or we get to the finish line. But we can't stop just because something hurts. And it was brilliant. The positive mindset of that, of no one saying, it's okay, or don't worry about it, or there's other races. Get rid of all of that and just say, just get on with it. You're not made of glass. You're going to be fine in a day's time, a week's time. Just get on and do it. And that was brilliant. And once I did 100 miles, I ended up looking into another one and another one. It was a gateway to these stupid events until I did my furthest one, which was the Dragon's Back, which is the length of Wales. And it's the world's most expensive camping holiday, to be honest with you. But it was nice to say. It was nice to say that I've done it.
So how far is that one then? The length of how far is that? That's a run, I take it. You said from the length. Yeah. So how far is that? Yeah,
that was a lumpy run over the mountains, and that was 380 kilometers, I think, over 6 days. And I think it's kind of world's toughest mountain race. So you climb the equivalent of Mount Everest twice. They go like when you think of these runs, people go, "Oh, how fast are you running?" And like, in all honesty, you're running slightly faster than walking pace, but a lot of it is scrambling or climbing over rocks. So I remember doing some of these things, and I think I'm going out for long runs, and because I work in London, I'm running around the bridges. In reality, I should have just climbed over my desk in the office and back over my desk and back over there. If I'd done that for an hour, that'd be better training than going and running around the bridges. But all of these things, they build you up, they build up your cardio, they build up your mind, and then when that's strong, then it's amazing how much you can go on to actually achieve.
I was just thinking that I've written loads down here because there's loads you said. Number one, you said I was in the top 10, so I was quite good, right? That's like that's a bit of an understatement, but anyway, I wrote that down because I just thought it was funny. But when you were talking about going into the unknown, so you were saying you were like 2 or 3 hours into the Devizes to Westminster thing. And then after that, you didn't know what was going to happen. You don't know how to feel. And you've just said that about the 100 milers as well. And it's like, you've attempted and then failed, attempted, failed. And then once you've done it, you can do another one to me, that is the physical side, not the physical side of it. It's the mental side of like, you're just telling your body, like, you're not finished. And you hear that all the time. You're only 40% finished when your body gives up. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but your body gives up before your brain gives up before your body does, doesn't it? That way around, yeah. And you've just you've just kind of proved that with what you said. Once you know it, it's like, right, well, what more? But with someone like you, obviously, it's like, right, what more can I do then? Which is, but it's really interesting that for the average person listening, is you've obviously done all this stuff, and it's like, right, what more can I do? And if everyone can get into that sort of mindset, even if it's like the couch to 5K or something like that, you know what I mean? It's all like a gateway to the next thing, isn't it? It's like, right, well, mentally you can do that. What can you next do? And I think that's brilliant. It's just it's great to hear someone like you talking about just taking it as far as you can. And Sean did the same. And
Chris
there was some,
isn't it?
Yeah, Chris Branch who did a 100-mile run round a track, like around a 400-meter track, and he went round and round, and then they go round the other way.
And then we had the 3 guys on.
We had the 3 guys on who did the Snowdon Marathon.
The Snowdon relay, 24 hours.
Relay, 24 hours up and down Snowdon. And again, it sounds like, well, it's just going up and down a mountain a couple of times, isn't it? But it's like, very little sleep overnight and all of that. So, yeah, all of these things, every time we have someone like you on, all these things pop up with anybody can do anything. They just need to start from where they're at.
Yeah, firm believer in that. There's some things that might be against you in life, because if you're born with a disability, then there might be some limitations on you, but it doesn't stop you from being able to push the boundaries of what you think you can do or what other people think you can do. If you're born with and your parents are really tall and you end up being really tall, that's going to inhibit your chances of being a gymnast, but boost your chances of being a basketball player or a volleyball player or do a high jump. So there's some things that skew you slightly in favor of you might be able to be better at something. But I think everyone's got a chance of really pushing the boundaries of what they can do. So when some people say, "Oh, I'm not a something," and so no, you're not, but not because you can't be. It's because you haven't tried to be. And if you try to be something for long enough, you'll get better at it. And those couch to 5Ks, I think, are fantastic. I'd put myself in the category of being a runner now, but before the age of 35, I don't think I would have done. I'm 44 now, end of the year. I'm 44 now, but before 35, I don't think I was a runner. In fact, the furthest that I probably ran back then was up to 20 kilometers, maybe 30 kilometers. I never ran a marathon because I remember that, because when I went to help this guy on a bit of a recce towards the end of his course, he said it was a 20K run, end up to 25K run. And for somebody who doesn't run, that's, that's borderline abuse. That is, when you say one distance and it turns out to be 5 kilometers more. And we got statistics. He said, "Oh, do you want to round it up so you can say you've done a whatever?" Oh, that was it. It was 20 miles. He said it was 20 miles. It ended up being 25 miles. And he goes, "Well, do you want to round it up so you can say you've done a full marathon? It's only another 1.2 miles." And I was like, "No, hard no." I'm like, "I'm by the car. I'm getting in the car. Like, I can barely walk to the car now. I've stopped running." But because of that, I'd done that, and I was like, "Well, I can run 25 miles now." The next time, it's like, "Well, now I can run 26. Now I can run 30," and it just goes up and up from that. Or you can run a little bit faster. So if all you can run is 2 kilometers, great, you can run 2 kilometers. Or if all you can walk to start with, and then you just add it on, and you'll be amazed what you can do. But you've got to chip away at it over and over again. No one gets good at something just because they really, really want to get good at something. If you just think about it. I've described it in the past of imagine trying to make the perfect lawn. You're going to make a show garden lawn. And your way of making that show garden lawn is every time you do a training session, you get given 10 blades of grass. It's like, well done. There's your 10 blades of grass towards your lawn. Now, the only way you're going to get a perfect lawn is if you do that training session over and over and over and over again. But every time you miss the training session, imagine someone stamping on your lawn. So then you're going to go back to square one. So if you have that mentality, if you're going to make something good by just chipping away over and over and over again, then you'll get there. Then everyone will go, "Wow, your garden looks incredible. How did you do that?" A lot of bloody hard work, but just time.
You're the perfect person to talk about this, because there's a book called Mastery by a guy, George Leonard, and we've had Dan John on, who you might or might not know, but he talks about it a lot. And I bought the book because he talked about it, and it's a great book. And it explains exactly what you've just said. Mastery comes from just learning to love the plateau, he says, because that's where you're going to spend most of your life. It goes up and then it goes along, and then it might blip up and then it goes along and then it might blip. At the very beginning, obviously, you get loads of results, and then it tapers off. But he says he categorizes, I think, 3 or 4 different types of people as like a dabbler who gets involved and then just falls off, and then gets involved in the next thing and falls off when it all gets a bit hard. I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head, but it's people who like, oh no, the obsessive who gets involved and then it's like, right, I want to hack this. Tell me what I need to do, how much I need to spend, who I need to talk to, and I'll get it. I'll get there in like 2 weeks. And then they fall off but they end up with all the stuff. And then there's the other person who's just happy to stay on the plateau and hang around with other people who do, and be just slightly better than them and stuff like that. As opposed to what you've just said, which is just keep going and keep going and keep going. And if it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, keep going, because eventually something will happen. And I suppose it's like we talk about training within your comfort zone and expanding your comfort zone to engulf the goal that you're going for, which is what you said about the marathon. Well, I've done 25 miles, so my comfort zone's just grown. So now 26 will be not easy, but you can do it, and then you just move forwards from there.
And you got to push yourself, and if you can find the will to push yourself, or to that desire to get better, because you're right, some people can plateau, and some people can be like the king of their own back garden, or the champion of their club, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't say that you want to be something else and then not put the work rate into it. So if you want to say you want the honor of representing your country, then that's hard. Not many people get that, but the people that do get it, because they kept pushing themselves and pushing themselves. And it's not for everyone. I don't mind that, but like, don't put limits on yourself, or don't think you can't do something, because you can if you want to. And if you keep pushing yourself, you mentioned about being obsessive, and I'll definitely put myself into that category. I decided to get good at darts once, and I wouldn't go to bed until I'd done a certain sequence of darts. And I wanted to get good at golf, so I went and hit 100 golf balls every morning for a local golf range for about 100 days. I get quite obsessive compulsive with things, but I love it, and I'm very sure on the mindset of you can chip away. If you go and do the same thing exactly the same way, you're not going to get better. It's you do the same. You're not pushing yourself. It's that kind of mentality of, I've driven a car a lot. It doesn't mean I can take on Hamilton around a racetrack, but because I've just driven the same car in the same way, in the same route, in the same format. If I tried to drive that car faster or better, I would have lost my license by now, but I would have got better at it. But it's that mentality of, are you trying to push yourself? Are you trying to get beyond? You get to a new comfort zone. All right, so what's the barrier there? How am I going to get beyond that one? How am I going to knock on the door of the next comfort zone?
I've just got visions of you now doing darts like 20 years ago or something like that. Like rocking up to the Ocky at the Riverside or whatever with a bunch of like blokes drinking pints and smoking, when they used to do all that, and you just turn up like probably quite ripped, massive shoulders. Like, right, they'd be like, you're in the wrong place, mate. Sorry.
I kind of thought darts would be quite funny, because I was thinking, out of all the sports I could take up, because eventually I'll be too old. I knew that back then to do canoeing at the highest level. I thought darts I could probably push on for a little bit longer. And you know what? There's not a single other sport in the world where you can be world champion and there can be someone dressed as a banana, hammered drunk, no more than 10 meters away from you. There's not another sport in the world that's like the closeness to the crowd in darts is unbelievable.
It's interesting because we mentioned, or you were talking about the different, I suppose, body types and natural propensities towards certain sports and things. And Dan John talks about success in sports being a matter of sort of genetics and geography. So if there is a genetic component that will make you better at something, but also where you're born and what you're exposed to when you're young. So he talks about, if you live in Canada and you're very athletic and strong, you're going to probably move into ice hockey. Whereas if you're you're in Kenya, you're more likely going to be distance running and things. So it's amazing. I was just wondering, I just had a thought really, the fact that you happened to just be walking past that canoe club when you were, 10, 11, 12 years old, and then started doing the canoeing and got to obviously GB international level, world record holder level. Do you think that if you'd maybe been exposed to or joined a different club, you had because of the mindset that you had, that you would, if you joined maybe athletics, for example, you've been signed up to local athletics club, might you have been, as good at something different? It's just that the opportunity wasn't there for you at the time.
Yeah, I 100% think that. I'm a firm believer in if you work hard enough for long enough at something, you'll get good at it. And if you're prepared to put more in work in than somebody else, I got good at my sport because I put more work in than anybody else did that allowed me to get to that level. I kind of learned early on that my key to this was if I can outwork you. And if I outwork you for long enough, I'll be better than you. And I got to that stage and I went for a long run, not being beaten in the country. But as far as what sport it was, I joined that club. But back then, it wasn't a racing club; it was more a recreational club that had a few people that did racing, and I loved the idea of the racing and competition. So yeah, being involved in that sport allowed me to get good at it. Ideally, my parents would have taken me to a tennis club because they pay a lot more, but that might have paid off the mortgage by now. But I do believe that if I'd have joined that club, yeah, I like to think that as long as I enjoyed it, that's the key. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're going to stop doing it. But I loved it. I loved the people there. I had friends there. My group of friends were from that world. I went to university because I picked a club that was the strongest racing club in the country and said, well, I don't mind where I go to uni, but I want to go in that area because that's where the best people are at. And yeah, the geography of where you're at makes a huge difference. As you said, if you grow up in Kenya, your idols, your role models are likely to be long distance runners. There'll be very few kids growing up in a Kenyan school thinking, I really want to be the next 100-meter runner. They want to be the next marathon runner. Opposite to that is if you grow up in Jamaica. I was watching a documentary on it, on sprinting, and they said, Jamaica they don't have athletics, they don't have track and field, they have sprinting. They only care about sprinting. So that's why you got more people going into that funnel, because a desire to follow in the footsteps of their role models. And Britain has quite a diversity of sports, so we're good at a lot of sports because there's a lot of role models in a lot of different sports. There's role models in football, rugby, cricket, athletics, swimming, diving, table tennis. Like, Britain's good at a lot of things now.
Excellent. We're very good at inventing sports and then teaching the rest of the world to be better at us. So you've talked about this, right? So your dedication to canoeing and all that sort of stuff. What did you have to sacrifice? So, because if you started that young, and you've and I'm talking, is sacrifice the right word? Because I mean, you do it because you love it. So what did you have to give up, or what did you not partake in? So you've said you went to university, and the location where you went to university was based around going to this canoe club. That's a big commitment, isn't it? Because you could go anywhere you want. So things like that, I would call a sacrifice, because you're sacrificing where you want to go to university for the canoeing. So there'll be other things that you have to do. So what have you had to kind of not partake in along the way?
Yeah, I think it's a great way of describing it. And sacrifice, I think, is absolutely the right word for it. But often sacrifice is associated with, like, you feel bad about it, or you got a level of regret about it. I've got no regret for the things that I didn't do. There's bits that when I grew up, I would sacrifice a lot of the social side of things. Now I'd still go out, but I'd get to the point where I just wouldn't drink as much. And you got guys, I remember with college, all the boys would go out on a lad's holiday to a horrible Spanish island somewhere, and like I missed out on that. I'd say horrible. I do regret that side. I would have loved to have gone with them, but it would have been great fun. But then I couldn't go because I was getting ready for a race, and it was like some of the early career things I might want to do. I grew up thinking I want to join the Royal Marines, and I wanted to go into that world because it just looked great. But I got to the same point where I was like, well, I could do that, or I can try and go to the World Championships. I was like, well, I want to do that now, and maybe I can do that later. So there's bits that I kind of changed my mindset. I wanted to do, change things that I would have definitely wanted to do, but didn't do, because that my pursuit of going to the World Championships in my sport just outweighed everything else that I wanted. And so my job was steered around that. My life was steered around that. When people said, do you want to go and do this event? If it was a weekend, the answer was like, probably no, because I'm going to do a race somewhere. And I used to race a ridiculous amount. I did more races than anybody. My parents would drive me all around the country. I'm a firm believer, if you want to get good at racing, do races. Don't just turn up and hope you're good at it. You have to be in it and be involved. So that side of things, yeah, I gave up a lot of that social element. Still went out. I just didn't go out as much as my friends would. I still do stuff. I still go on holidays. Just my holidays would be, in my mind, is when I'm going on a canoeing race, a canoeing trip. So I wouldn't go on a traditional holiday, as it were.
So what do you find then, Keith, that because I know obviously you're now involved in kind of the business world and things like that in terms of life. What has a lifetime of international competition and training given you outside of the sport? You know, the kind of the way that you conduct your life now, and the kind of job that you do and things. What lessons have you taken from your quite extraordinary life? And I know you're still involved in sport and you still do challenges and things, like you only broke the world record last year. So but you know, how do you bring these skills, transfer these skills over to your kind of day job, if you like, and what you do?
Firstly, there's a huge amount of overlap. A true believer in that. And to start with, I wonder how much there was. I was in a job for a long time that I loved. I was a head of faculty in a university college, and I really enjoyed that. And there was the opportunity to be made redundant towards the end of my racing career, and I kind of took that as well. I was like, brilliant, that will give me the opportunity to change. And I changed careers completely, and now I'm a operations director with a medical journal called EMJ, European Medical Journal. And I love it working with those people, because the owners are incredibly ambitious. I often describe it as a very competitive working environment. And by that, we're not competing against each other. It's not me against someone else. It's the whole company striving to achieve these goals, these targets that we have each year. And I think that's brilliant. And what I take from the competitive world, one thing I think is a big plus for me is just how, I guess, blunt and to the point I can be on things, because it helps me get to where I want to get to much faster. You know, it comes with the risk of alienating people or pushing people away. So I have to always be conscious of that. Just because I say something how I might want to hear it doesn't mean I'm saying something how you might want to hear it, or someone else wants to hear it. And sometimes I carry that coaching side of things, that competitiveness, maybe too much into the sports world. I say too much. Deep down, I don't believe it's too much. I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing. And I've often described it. If I'm out in a training session and I see someone's doing something wrong in the group, so we've got some young ones racing here. If I saw them doing something wrong and I'm training with them, I've got a few choices I can make now as someone who's managing them or overseeing and coaching them. I can wait until the end of the month and I can tell their parents. By the way, last 3 weeks ago, someone did something wrong, which is a bit like a performance review at the end of the month at work. Or I could wait until later on that day and email them and let them know, by the way, this could have been better. Or I can just say it as I see it when it's happening. And if I say it as I see it when it's happening, then it either gives them the opportunity to improve and learn from that straight away, or they can say, no, Keith, no, you're wrong. I'm doing it like this because. And I can say back in training terms, no, you're an idiot. Yeah, you need to pay attention. Or I can say, oh, right, that's why you're doing it. That makes sense to me. So I think I carry a lot of that over into the career side of things, is that the responsiveness of, read a situation, say it as I see it. What do the metrics tell me? What does the data tell me? What does this situation look like? And most importantly, what are we going to learn from it, and how are we going to make it better? Like, if we've got a challenge, if we've got a problem, that's great. The challenge isn't the challenge. The problem isn't the problem. The problem is, what are we going to do next? And if we're not prepared to analyze it properly, if we're not prepared to take responsibility and accountability, we're not prepared to drill into it and find out what the real problem is, well, we're never going to get to a solution. We're never going to get to a better place. But the quicker you can do that, the better you can work with someone, the more effectively you can work with someone. If you can get to the point where you can say what you think, and they can tell you back whether they think you're right or wrong or other, and you can go, okay, between us, we're going to agree this is the best way forward. That's how you achieve things. And one thing I do emphasize a lot at work, I have the opportunity to talk to the whole company every Monday morning, and I love it. I love that opportunity to speak to people. It gives me a chance to practice speaking publicly, but it also makes me feel like I have the opportunity to make a positive impact. And I've often described in the place, we hear about these successful businesses, these awesome businesses, same way as you hear about these awesome athletes. But they all started somewhere. They all started like we're starting a company. We start a company quite small, but we're at 95 people now, and the company's doing really well. But these huge mega companies, they all started like that. They didn't come on the scene as like a mega company. An athlete who's coming top 10 in the world they didn't do their first race and go, oh, well, that was good. Where'd you come? 12th in the world. I could probably do better. They start somewhere. And if they chip away and they push themselves, they get to top 10 in the world. And those companies, if they push themselves, if they look for those opportunities, they get better as well. Companies that stay the same and collapse are the ones who just accept mediocrity, a that'll do approach, and they tail away. Athletes who accept that, like, yeah, I could go training, but it's a bit hard work. I could go training, but it's raining. I could go training, but I don't really like the winter. Yeah, you're right. Some people don't like the winter, but don't expect then to make the GB team next summer. As a company, don't expect to hit a record month. Don't expect to get a promotion if you're not pushing yourself. You push yourself, whatever you do, you roll up your sleeves, you're prepared to learn, you're prepared to set yourself a new boundary, and you work relentlessly to get that. And then once you got there, give yourself a pat on the back, admire your achievements for a little bit, but then push that cone out further, push that boundary a little bit more, and keep doing it. The guys who keep doing that are successful in business. The guys that keep doing that in sport are successful in sport. You know, the best overnight successes happen in like take 10, 15 years to happen.
Brilliant. I have to say, I know that we're in between races in Poland, and we're going to kind of let you go in a minute, but I think we'll definitely, I will try and catch up with you, Keith, when you're back, and it'd be great to maybe catch up with you, and I would love to maybe have you on in the future again to talk. We just started getting to it at the end there, where I've seen you do some presentations where you talk about, you know, we won't go into it now because it's you know, it could be another hour, but you know, that kind of good to great and then great to world class. And I think that there's a lot in this podcast, this last hour that we've done, that everyday people can take in whichever way that, you know, and apply it to whatever area of life that they want to apply it. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Keith. It really has. And yeah, I mean, have you enjoyed it, Pete? You've had a good hour.
It's fantastic. Number one, if you and Keith meet up in Chelmsford, I think you should go for a run together. Number two,
don't run anymore. I haven't ran for years.
Number two, at the beginning, when you were saying about, I immediately thought, it came into my head about pushy parents, and yours obviously weren't, is pushy kids. That's what we need more of, isn't it? Because you were a pushy kid. And well, it doesn't even sound like you were. It sounds like you had a thing with your parents of, I want to do this, and they were like, okay, then. Not,
yeah,
no, you can't. Or, I want to. Okay, well, let make you prove it. And it wasn't like them saying, no, you have to do this instead. So I think that
100% on that. Just to breathe in there, they never had like that pushiness. They had kind of an expectation of like, well, we brought you here, so you might as well show your hardest kind of approach. My dad would always kind of have a silly throwaway comment of like, get to the front and stay there. Or we'd kind of say, what's your strategy for today? I said, oh, I'm going to try and beat second place by 1 place. And silly little things like that. But it would always be a mindset of like, well, we've come all the way here, so we might as well try and win. And it's that kind of, I think parents can be maybe sometimes too pushy, or it's, I think parents and friends and family, they mean well, but they can put a safety bubble around people that kind of says, oh, no, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And you know what? It doesn't matter, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try hard. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't push yourself. Like, the world's not going to end if you didn't win that race. But the world, you know, if you imagine the world will end if you keep pulling out the race, or if you keep giving up, or if you keep not trying, then that's not a nice environment to kind of comfort someone in, because it stops them growing. It stops them getting better. It kind of says, it doesn't matter. And like India, I was trying to say, you're right, it doesn't matter. They're not saving lives when they're doing canoe races. They've always got to, that was all right, he did really well. When he didn't, I'm not saying you should slam them or put them down, but you know, just be honest and encourage people to push their own boundaries.
That's interesting. We had Lucy Underdown on a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, Pete? And she's the first female, and she's just from Kent actually, and she's the first female to deadlift over 700 pounds. She's one of the strongest women in the world, so about 320 kilos. And she said that she actually kind of took a bit of pressure off herself by sort of saying, because she would go out to deadlift and there's thousands of people watching, and it's kind of right, you got this one lift that you need to do once, and she kind of, in her mind, sort of, it doesn't matter if I don't do it, you know, it kind of, nothing's gonna, you know, in 2 days, everyone would have forgot about it. So she kind of took the pressure off of herself that way. But at the same time, she's consistently training to be able to do it. And she usually steps up and does it. But that was just her way of controlling, I suppose, the anxiety in the moment, you know, of all that pressure. But no, it's been great, Keith. I know you've got another race to get to, or to what I can see. I can see some people on the water actually behind you, I think. Yeah.
I just want to say to Keith,
Keith.
I just want to say to Keith, thank you very much, because there's two things that immediately came up right at the end there when you were doing your motivational piece, which is great because we got that for free as well. Because I'm sure you're charged to go around and do motivational speaking. Now we've just got you to do it for us for free and for our listeners. So you're very welcome, listeners. But two things come up, and I'll start with the podcast first because me and James have been talking about it. So we've done 207 episodes of this. We're getting better guests on. We're getting guys like you on and stuff like that, and Lucy and all these people. And we've been talking about it, and it's just keep doing it. We've just got to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And whether something happens doesn't really matter, but if it does, all the better. But we're going to keep doing it, and we've been talking about this. James has even had the logo put on his bonnet of his car. But the other thing is, I'm setting up another business on the side as well. I'm setting up another business as well. Getting people out to go walking and stuff like that. And everything you've just said there, that is the mentality I'm trying to hold. It is where it is now, and it's going in the right direction. We'll be looking for funding. We might get it. We might not. It doesn't matter because we just keep going. It's not, I was telling the people last night, it's not going to fail because we're all invested in it, in our time and energy. Now we just need to invest, get the money to invest in it, sort of thing. So that's the roadblock at the moment. And it's just helped me loads. Just listen. I'm going to listen to this again when it comes out, and I'll be listening to that bit because that's just basically it, isn't it? You take away the outcome and you just do the process.
100%.
Yeah. So thank you for that.
I'll leave you with my favorite quote from Rocky Balboa is that it doesn't matter how hard you hit. What matters is how hard you can get hit and keep moving forwards. If you can keep moving forwards, you can achieve great things. Rocky is the film that was at #1 in the year in the month I was born, in the year I was born, November 1976. Rocky was the #1 film, so I'm destined. So now I can just sit back because it's destiny.
Keith,
forget about everything Keith just said. It doesn't matter. It's destiny.
Keith, if people want to find out more about you and watch what you do, and I mean, what's the best platform for people to kind of have a look? I mean, I know I've been watching your YouTube channel. I know you are on Instagram and stuff, but where are you most active, and where would you direct people if people wanted to kind of follow you and what you do?
Yeah, I think there's video content. I do some motivational speaking every now and then that I put onto a YouTube channel. I'm organising an ultra race this coming up next month. So there's a lot of energy going on to that, which is called a Thames 200 Ultra. I'm on LinkedIn. My name is rare enough that if you just tap it into Google, it'll pop up with something. I think I fill up the first few pages. That's the good thing about having a niche name, that you get to dominate those pages. So if someone wants to get hold of me, if they want to talk through anything, I'm sure you can find me. I'm sure you can reach out pretty easy enough.
Excellent. Yes, that's Keith, and it's Keith Moule, and it's Moule, and that is the YouTube channel. And like Keith said, if you just tap that in, loads of stuff. I went down a rabbit hole. I was reading an article that you were involved in, I think on Paddling Magazine, I think it was, came up. So yeah, loads of stuff comes up if you just type in Keith's name into Google.
That sounds like one of those magazines that have I got news for you at the end. You know, when they do the captions, we've got Paddling Magazine.
Paddling Magazine. Yeah, I think it was Paddling Magazine. Anyway, Keith, thank you so much. We'll let you get back to the races in Poland. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. I'll maybe try and catch up with you when you're back in the UK. I know you're quite local to me. So yeah, and we'll definitely have you back on again in the future to kind of go down, more of the kind of the motivational stuff that you use within organizations to help people get in the right mindset for kind of going from good to great and then from great to world class. But yeah, thank you so much, Keith. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Perfect. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, gentlemen. Look forward to
Brilliant.
speaking again. Bye for now.
Brilliant. Thank you. Cheers, Keith. See you later. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, guys, we will just wrap up then. We'll let Keith go to his next race in Poland. We would like you, please, to write a review for us on Apple Podcasts. We have had another review come in. I'll read it at the start of next week's podcast. And then we will be giving away some merch, Health Oddity t-shirts, Health Oddity hoodies, that kind of thing. We are joined next week on episode 208 with our first ever guest, our first German guest from Germany, Mr. Sven Rieger, very strong chap who was referenced, I think, a couple of podcasts ago by Andy Russell, who Sven coached him to lift the Dinnie stones in Scotland. So Sven is going to come on to the podcast next week. So we'll see you then for episode 208. Until then, bye-bye.